I make a way with public funds amounting to 10 billion, 20 billion, and I'm allowed to keep that money for 10 years. Such money kept in the bank must have attracted interest.
The law has resulted in tax avoidance, tax evasion, profit shifting, base erosion, etc., etc.
We say illicit financial fraud. And from that trend, what we need to understand is the movement of dirty money. And by dirty money, what do I mean? Money or wealth made through corrupt practices.
About exposing those destinations as being receptive to such public funds, and then also holding them accountable with possible sanctions and penalties to be paid.
Another high-profile corruption case is that of Desiani Alison Madueke. Desiani Alison Madueke, a former Minister of Petroleum Resources, who has been accused of money laundering up to the tune of $20 billion. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, had stated that the commission will do everything within its powers to ensure that the former Minister of Petroleum Resources is prosecuted.
I'm sure the tissue must be made with gold, if that's possible. It's actually real gold. Yes, that's real. Confirmed. Yes, no. She said the sockets as well, and this is real gold.
EFCC has also traced a number of criminal activities to the minister, ranging from abuse of office, bribery, fraud, misuse of public funds, and money laundering.
Peace be unto you here.
Peace be unto you too.
How is the work going? Hope you are almost done.
The work is moving on fine, but we still have a few more weeks to complete it. As I can see here, they did not make some major connections and didn't label the wires well.
Supervisor, what are you saying? Let me see you outside.
What seems to be the problem, sir?
You are the problem.
Me?
You want to finish all the work. Which contract are we going to award next year? You don't know that we keep these things in the budget, so we can keep awarding it every year. That way, all of us are making money.
I don't get it.
I mean, stop work and say you are finished. No one will know anything, and I will make sure the contracts are coming in. Just help me transfer my cut to this account in Jesse.
Stop now. I see what you are trying to do. You are among those spoiling this country. With your illicit financial flow, you and your Jesse accounts will land in EFCC's net.
Supervisor, I was only joking with you, my brother.
If you see something, say something.
Other cases include Chief Femi Fani-Kayode, a former Minister of Aviation, who is currently standing trial alongside Mrs. Esther Nenadi Usman, also a former Minister of State for Finance, Danjuma Yusuf, and a company named John Trust Dimensions Nigeria Limited, before a federal high court in Lagos over an alleged 4.6 billion naira fraud. Senator Abdulaziz Nyako is the son of former Governor Murtala Nyako. He is facing a 29 billion naira fraud which was brought against him by the EFCC. The senator is being prosecuted alongside his father and 2 others on a 37-count charge of criminal conspiracy, stealing, abuse of office, and money laundering. Mohammed Bello Adoke is a former Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, who the EFCC is prosecuting on a 14-count charge bordering on money laundering to the tune of $6 million. Peter Ayodele Fayose is a former governor of Ekiti State. He is standing trial in an alleged 1.8 billion naira money laundering charge. Other individuals whose corrupt practices and criminal charges had been exposed to the public purview through the publication of the 100 high-profile cases covered by the compendium are Dr. Erastus Akingbola, a former managing director of the defunct Intercontinental Bank PLC, who is standing trial on 179 billion naira fraud charges. Farouk Lawan, who is a former chairman of the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee on Fuel Subsidy, is another individual on the compendium. He is being prosecuted by the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, for allegedly collecting $500,000 bribe from Mr. Femi Otedola, a businessman, in 2012. He has been given 7 years imprisonment.
Eluladi, how are you? I'm fine, sir. Let me go straight to the point. That your invoice for the integration is too small. I need you to mark it up. Mark it up by 400%.
Ah, sir, that is way above the price. I have added everything including tax and profits. Marking it up by 400% will be out of this world, sir.
It looks like you don't want to be rich. Is it your money? My boy, take the invoice all the way up. Mark it up.
No problem, sir.
Do whatever you like with the 100% of the markup and send the remaining 300% to my foreign account.
What if?
Don't what if anything. The account is all the way in Switzerland. Untraceable.
Chief wants to use us to launder money. Don't do it, It's IFF, Mr. Ladi. I don't want you to go to jail,
Ah, Oladipupo, I can hear you people.
Ah, the phone is still on, Yeah, off your mic.
If you see something, say something. Blow the whistle against IFF, illicit financial flow.
The compendium also highlighted the case of Mr. Sunday Hehidero, a former Inspector General of Police, who was arraigned together with John Obaniyi, the Commissioner of Police in charge of Finance and Budget, at the Force Headquarters on May 10, 2018 by the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC. They were both accused by ICPC for misappropriating the sum of 557 million naira. donated by the Bayelsa government to the Nigerian police force for the purchase of arms and ammunition. Next on the 100 high-profile cases is that of Air Commodore Adeshola Amosu, retired. A former Chief of Air Staff (COAS), who alongside Air Vice Marshal Jacobs Adegun, a former Chief of Accounts and Budgeting, as well as Air Commodore Gbadebo Owoduni, a former Director of Finance and Budget in the Nigerian Air Force, are all facing prosecution brought against them by the EFCC for an alleged 21.4 billion naira fraud. Dr. Joy Nonye is a former acting managing director of Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC). She was dismissed by President Muhammadu Buhari in February 2020. She was indicted in an alleged misappropriation of 40 billion naira scam during her tenure as the Managing Director, Interim Management Committee of NDDC. She was summoned by the House Committee on NDDC to an investigation hearing on the alleged missing 40 billion naira from NDDC funds. Neither the EFCC nor ICPC has taken any legal action against Dr. Joy Nonye or the NDDC on the alleged fraud.
It's a big plus to look into other activities which of course being used by these suspected criminals and those with ill-gotten wealth, especially the activities like real estate projects, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and the like. So we are making a lot of efforts to look into that aspect, which will also help in detecting and tracing illicit financial flows, because of recent we have established such kind of movement of illicit funds to that aspect. We are doing that in collaboration with a lot of NGOs and the CSOs. We are having a lot of intelligence across even jurisdictions, and we are working on that. We are succeeding, and we are urging other CSOs and NGOs and even citizens with information to come forward, to join hands together with the EFCC to rid this country of economic and financial crimes.
Peace be unto you here.
Peace be unto you too.
How is the work going? Hope you are almost done.
The work is moving on fine, but we still have a few more weeks to complete it. As I can see here, they did not make some major connections and didn't label the wires well.
Supervisor, what are you saying? Let me see you outside.
What seems to be the problem, sir?
You are the problem.
Me?
You want to finish all the work. Which contract are we going to award next year? You don't know that we keep these things in the budget, so we can keep awarding it every year. That's why all of us are making money.
I don't get it.
I mean, stop work and say you are finished. No one will know anything, and I will make sure the contracts are coming in. Just help me transfer my cut to this account in Jesse.
Stop now. I see what you are trying to do. You are among those spoiling this country. With your illicit financial flow, you and your Jesse accounts will land in EFCC's net.
Supervisor, I was only joking with you, my brother.
If you see something, say something.
In line with the fight against corruption and illicit financial flows in Nigeria, HEDA also organized a training program tagged Experts Training and Advocacy on Tracing and Recovery of Illicit Funds and Assets in October 2019. The training program, which was held in Abuja, Kano, and Port Harcourt, was geared towards empowering participants with tools and access to information on corrupt individuals and their stolen assets, domicile, and
Come on, you don't have to use the specific word with job quotation.
What about if I wanted to search a specific site?
The special advisor to the president on social investment, Mrs. Mariam Huwais, who was the keynote speaker, stated that 80% of the funds used for social investment were from Abacha's loot and 20% from World Bank. She also emphasized that various monitoring structures have been put in place to ensure that the money disbursed get to the poorest of the poor in the communities. The Executive Director, HEDA Resource Center, Mr. Olanrewaju Suraju, noted that the country has lost $600 billion in the last 59 years to money laundering and other forms of illicit funds transfer by Nigerians and some foreigners operating in Nigeria. He, however, urged citizens to join forces with the government to stem the tide of illicit accumulation of public assets.
There was the report, indicting even World Bank for very poor monitoring of the implementation of the fund, and there was no report to expose that. I personally and HEDA and our partners undertook a physical inspection and investigation of some of those, projects, and we were shocked to see that quite a number of the projects, even with full payment, were not implemented up to 30%. It was as shameful as some of the projects were cited in locations that are not found on Nigerian map, and that was really shocking for us, and at the same time saddening. But it is, to a very large extent, some measure of progress so far as it is presently, now that some of the funds are not just left to the government agreement and implementation. So some civil society organizations were involved under the GFA arrangement, to monitor the process of agreement for repatriation and also compel some of the state or governments returning the fund to also accept and introduce as a condition for the implementation, the involvement of civil society to monitor the utilization. And that was why the conditional cash transfer of this current government started in 2016 was also part of the utilization of the Abacha loot that was reformed, and civil society organizations were involved with the Nigerian Social Investment projects to also monitor the process. It is very important at this stage, like you inquired about what needs to really be done. It's important to get a number of the international and other countries, the international bodies like the United Nations and the African Union, the OECD, to get some of the countries that have benefited from illicit financial flow to commence not just a process of returning some of these resources back to the countries of origin, is also for them to start also paying penalties for warehousing these noxious funds and assets within their system. I mean, they've benefited for, some of the Abacha funds that are just recovered stayed in some of these countries for 20 years and more. So you can imagine what would be the interest on those such funds being in ordinary commercial banks, not to talk of where it is actually being used in terms of trading and also other form of businesses. So it is quite important that Nigeria is in a good position to provide the leadership for other countries that are also affected by the same gravity or even lesser gravity of illicit financial flow.
Speaking further on the scourge of corruption, Mr. Nick Hildyard, a resource person from Corner House, stressed that Africans should unite and come together as one in order to set the tone for an agenda against corruption, adding that a commission should be set up to discourage Nigerian elites from engaging in illicit funds transfer to foreign banks.
Whatsoever for those who loot Nigeria or any other country. I have no goodwill whatsoever for those who facilitate the looting, and that includes huge numbers of elites in the West, our banking community, often complicit press, etc. in London and elsewhere.
In his address, Mr. Antonio Tricarico, also a resource person, encouraged the media to put more effort in their investigative reports and ensure that stolen assets are recovered and repatriated back to Nigeria to be used for infrastructural development and the alleviation of poverty.
And I come from Italy, a country where there are serious problems still with organized crime, and the real battle with organized crime began when authorities were able to confiscate assets, but most importantly to give them back for social purpose to the population. And this is what scared a lot of organized crime, because it's how we somehow reinstitute public interest in managing those assets is pretty key.
At the interactive session of the training program, Mr. Christian Erickson brainstormed with the participants on the use of social media as an investigative tool. The African Director, MacArthur Foundation, Dr. Kole Shetima, in his speech said that the poor citizens in the country are the ones who suffer the consequences of corruption.
We know that corruption is probably the highest or the biggest tax of the poor. The poor people are the ones who are paying with their limbs, with their lives, and in terms of the quality of their education, in all aspects of their life, they are the biggest victims of corruption in the world. They are the ones whose resources are taken out of the country to some other parts of the world, and they suffer as a result of the consequences of corruption in our land.
Our topic for today is IFF. And does anyone know the meaning of the abbreviation? IFF in full is illicit financial flow. It's the portion of illicit finance that crosses borders or it's transferred out of a country. What did I say?
Illicit financial flow.
Good. In summary, IFFs is the criminal money transfer that seeks to keep the action out of the books. So can you give me an example of IFFs? So let's have it. You are they.
When contractors give kickbacks to government representatives using offshore accounts.
Excellent example. Laba, you have an example for us?
Yes, ma'am. When natural resources, especially oil and gas, bitumen and so on, are under invoice or over invoice.
That's correct. And if you see something, say something. Blow the whistle. ICPC, EFCC, CCB, FIRS, and the police are your partners on this one.
An estimated $10 to $18 billion is lost from Nigeria through illicit financial flow. It affects all of us. If you see something, say something.
The Open Society Foundation, which is CEO of the Institute, of outflow out of Africa and out of Nigeria. For Nigeria, for instance, the figures go up to over $200 billion in regards to IFF. So, if they are losing that level of money, it means that they must take this seriously, whatever political affiliations you have.
Officials. Yeah, it's the same thing. Let me tell you, two of the people who go against are already dead. Oh. Yeah.